Am I wrong for not wanting to have a relationship with my sister-in-law? Just a few details before I get to the main story. I went to high school with my sister-in-law, but she was a year ahead of me. We had one class together. I always thought that she was really pretty, but she had the worst attitude towards teachers and always getting into fights. So I always kept my distance. Moving a few years forward, she showed up at my in-laws' house. We had one mutual friend and I was not aware he was even friends with her. Well, she started dating my brother-in-law and we became really good friends. We all went on double dates and did many activities together. Her and I would go to Zumba at the park and we had dinners together often, celebrated many birthdays together with family, etc. Then my brother-in-law proposed to her. All of us were super ecstatic. Mind you, all of my husband's brothers had girlfriends and wives. There are 4 brothers, including my husband, and we all had such an amazing group relationship. She has a big family full of sisters and half-sisters, which she treats like garbage because some of them are single moms or didn't finish school but have great jobs. Well, she told me that she wanted all of her bridesmaids to go on a cruise because she knew we were all moms and wanted us to have fun. The cruise was a nightmare. During this time, I was going through a dark time. My depression was into high gear and my anxiety was all over the place. But I acted like nothing was wrong because I didn't want to ruin her bachelorette. She was sick the whole time. This was in November 2019, right around the beginning of COVID. Little by little, we were all starting to get sick. She was upset that one of her sisters and I separated from the group to take pictures with birds. We were having fun. Apparently, she had an issue with that. Anyway, fast forward to her wedding day. Also on my in-laws' anniversary wedding day, a week before Christmas, which is a busy time for me at work. I'm a hairstylist. In the morning, while everyone was getting their hair done in her suite, I was in my room getting ready and doing my daughter's, mother-in-law, and another member of the family. I received a call from my cousin in Guatemala, letting me know that my grandmother, who raised me until I moved to the US, had passed away. I started crying because she was my grandmother. Also, I was the one who had to tell my dad that his mom had passed away. I called my husband and told him what was happening. He gave me the option if I wanted to just go home, which I regret now, but I stayed because again, I didn't want to ruin her day. The wedding happened and then the party. I left the party an hour before the event was over. My husband and other family members can confirm this. Well, COVID hit and I didn't see the family until spring. When I saw her, I just didn't want to talk to her because I was angry, which made the family wonder why I wasn't talking to her. So I texted her and I said we should talk and clear the air. We met for lunch and let me tell you, she blamed me for everything that went wrong at her wedding. That I had been a terrible friend and how dare I leave the wedding early. People had told her I left in the middle of the party. I mentioned to her that I didn't appreciate how she had been treating me and the fact that she called me a maid. Where did she call her maid? Where did she say maid? She said, well, maid is the word for bridesmaid. LOL, I was starting to get angry, but I kept my cool because I didn't want to start crying. Then I mentioned to her that I left early because my grandmother had passed away. This is why I was so angry at her. She said, well, it's too bad that it will be the only thing you'll remember on my wedding day. Is that the reason why your parents didn't show up to my wedding? I don't remember anything that happened after that. I started crying and somehow ended up at my parents'. How can someone say that? I now can't stand to see her or be in the same place as her. I'm polite to her because of my mother-in-law. And after spending over $4,000 on her wedding, even though my husband and I make enough to live comfortably and provide for our daughter, it was a lot of money. I know I will never get an apology from her because she's perfect and can't do no wrong. So, am I the asshole? Well, you kind of left the part where she called you a maid. So I can't take that into consideration. But what I can take into consideration is that if my I don't care if you're at my wedding, my close friend, whatever, and you have a death like that, doesn't matter what it is. If you're my friend, if you could stay, you would stay. And I know that. But if you told me you had to go, I would trust that you had to go. I'm not going to question your judgment or question your love for me. You know what I mean? But that's how my friends are. If you're insecure in your relationship with your friends, and that can project that the way it did. But I would just make sure, of course, go. Let me know if you need anything. Be safe. I hope you're okay. Be there for my friend. Yes, weddings are great and all of that, but I think real friendships show in the hard times too. And you should have listened to your initial instinct of her of not being friends with people like that. Just always listen to your gut. And it's your brother's wife, so your brother-in-law's wife, so it's even farther away. You don't have to see her all the time. And even when you do, you're very cordial, very respectful. Hey, how are you? Yada 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 yada. You don't have to have a relationship with everyone in your husband's family. And then her comment, that's such a self-conceited comment. You went through such a major loss on her wedding day. And even though you had every reason to excuse yourself, you stayed to avoid causing disruption. And that shows a lot of consideration on your part. 4K is crazy for a guest. Crazy. What the hell did you buy? $4,000 is crazy. I didn't even spend that much on my sister's wedding as being the sister of the bride or one of my best friend's wedding. I'm going to try to play both sides of it. So from your friend, the sister-in-law's perspective, she was probably whatever. I actually can't justify her. You were grown adults. Life happens. Shit happens. Her reaction to your grandmother's passing and her dismissive and hurtful comments is very callous and lacking empathy. And she showed very little understanding, compassion to your grief. And the hell, sense of entitlement and disregard for your feeling, calling you a maid, even though I want to know more details on that. Lack of respect between your relationship. Why would anyone force this is me. You cannot force me to do something I don't want to do. And that also includes having relationships with people. Protect your peace. That's the only thing you can do is control yourself. Am I wrong for telling my daughter that I won't budge even if she never speaks to me again? My daughter Casey, 17 female, worked and saved up money for around a year to be able to afford a better car than we would buy her with our family budget. My older daughter Alana, 16 female, has ADHD. Recently got her driver's license and asked to drive Casey's car. Casey allowed it, but Alana ended up having a bad accident around 6 months ago, which basically rendered the car unusable. The insurance payout wasn't nearly enough to cover the replacement, and with Alana's medical bills from the accident, thankfully there was no permanent damage, just a broken arm and leg. There was no way we could afford to replace Casey's car immediately. Alana was very apologetic to Casey, and so were we since we couldn't afford to replace her car. Casey didn't accept our apology and has been basically avoiding us, skipping family dinners and pretty much pretending that her mom, Alana, and I don't exist and only talks to us if she needs a form signed for her school. I begged her to come to a family therapy session and she eventually relented, but with the condition that Alana wouldn't be present. In the therapy session, she told us that she won't be resuming a relationship with us until we replace her car, which realistically won't be until next year. When the therapist asked how she expected us to do that, Casey said we could just make Alana work to earn the money. The issue is that Alana has severe ADHD and already has trouble managing her schoolwork. I'm worried that making her work to earn her money will harm her grades and have significant ramifications for her future. Casey said, well, she should have thought about that before destroying my car. I don't care. I'm not going to speak to any of you unless I have my car replaced. I responded that she was free to avoid speaking to me for as long as she wanted, but I'm not going to permanently harm her sister's future to get her a car earlier. My wife agrees with me that we need to stand firm on our position, but is also genuinely afraid of Casey never speaking to her ever again. I understand that her car was ruined, but I as a parent need to look out for all of my children, not just one. I also don't want to set that precedent that emotional blackmail will ever work if what you're asking for is unreasonable. So, am I the asshole? Yeah. Sorry. 1000%. I'm like at a loss for words. 1000% you're wrong. I'm looking at this from Casey's perspective, okay? She worked hard for something valuable to her, and it was taken away due to an accident that had nothing to do with her involving her sister. She's understandably hurt and frustrated. And not just because of the car, but also because she feels like her hard work was for nothing. And her anger may also be amplified by the fact that the accident was avoidable, even though it may not have been intentional. And especially for a teenager, the car symbolizes much more than transportation. It's like her independence, achievement, and like in fairness, like I'd be like, yeah, I worked hard for that car. That's a sense of like, you're proud about it. Like I did this by myself. I think Casey feels that there has not been enough accountability or consequences for Alana's actions, which is leading her to this very strong emotional reaction. Alana made a mistake. Mistakes happen. It doesn't negate the fact that she's also responsible for said consequences. However, sorry, I'm like taking a break. The argument that her schoolwork would suffer if she worked isn't necessarily a strong justification for her not contributing in some way to fixing the situation. ADHD is for sure a challenge, but many people with ADHD successfully balance school and part-time jobs. You can't use this as a weakness against her, then she shouldn't have been driving if you were that concerned about her ADHD. No, Alana needs to get a job. If it wasn't her sister, what would you have done? You're getting some grace because it is your other daughter. But if it was someone else's car she crashed, you would have had to pay it out. On principle, right? I think Casey would have had a different reaction if you guys all weren't so on Casey's side. I mean, Alana's side, you know, like I know she would have had more grace for her sister, but as long as someone like, hey, promise we're going to pay you back, but we're going to get this back to you sooner than a year, then she would have been okay. But the fact that you guys are making excuses for Alana would piss me off too. Work.
Never men leave comments beneath women's videos that say, good luck being alone with your cats when you're old. I'm like, why do you hate cats? Because they leave those comments and we're like, obviously it's projection, right? The worst thing they can think of is being alone. And so they project that onto you. But no, the worst thing they can think of is being alone with cats. Like they're sitting behind their keyboards in their dark basements and they're like, it's the worst thing in the world being alone. No, you know what's worse than that? If you're alone and a cat crawled into your lap. Oh, that's just the worst. They say alone with cats like it's a nightmare and not a premium experience. I would pay money to be alone with cats because I don't have cats. Imagine, if you will, a coffee store / bookstore, okay? And you go in and you can rent rooms by the hour and you get your coffee and you get your little treat and you go into your room and you're alone. That's the point of it. Though the best part is that you're alone with the cats in this room that you rented for an hour, and there's just like a cozy little spot to sit and read with your cats and your coffee. That's a dream. All these men in our comment section saying, oh, good luck being alone with your cats. Don't tempt us with a good time. I'm sure there are a lot of women who, if they didn't have to leave their house for work, they would just be alone with their cats 100% of the time. Their cats and their books and their Netflix, let's be honest.